Doing well. All right. There we go. Hope everybody's doing all right this evening. We're picking up and continuing talking about some of Jesus' discussions with people and his use of reason, of logic. Jesus was never one to tell people, you need to just accept something. He would tell them, you need to believe it. What's the difference in accepting something and believing something? We use those interchangeably sometimes incorrectly. What's the difference? Absolutely. You can accept something without believing it if you don't put any thought into it. If you're not willing to think it through, or you just haven't had the time. You can accept something. We do that a lot when we're growing up. We're growing up, our parents tell us things, our teachers tell us things, and we are told many times, accept it. When you've got a 2-year-old, what is a 2-year-old famous for? Every 2-year-old famous for. Why? Why are they doing that? Sometimes, maybe trying to get what they want. But when they're doing it without that motive, and they're just wanting to know, why are they wanting to know? Discovery. They're ignorant, okay? They're not dumb, they're ignorant. They don't know. So why? Why? And sometimes as parents, we may do a good job and explain and help them to understand something instead of just accept it. But sometimes maybe we are short on time. We don't have time to deal with that right now, so we say, because I said so. What did we just tell them?
Accept it.
Accept it. Okay? We just told them, accept it. This is the way it is, accept it. That's okay sometimes. Sometimes we're dealing with somebody who knows what they're talking about. I don't know what they're talking about, and they don't have the time or perhaps the inclination right now to explain it to me. So they say, just go with it. Now, it should be, of course, with understanding that I'm going to keep searching for the answer, the understanding of why it's that way. And so there's reason behind things, and we want to know what the reason is. So how do you find the reason behind something? You research it. You ask somebody who knows. You find somebody who's an authority on the issue, and you talk to them about it. Well, Jesus talked to people a lot, and in his discussions, he was not one to tell them, this is what it is, accept it. He was one to explain things, to help them understand, to give them reason. Now, reason does not just mean motivation. It means there's thinking behind it. I want you to understand why it's this way. And so Jesus does this. Last week we came down through his healing on the Sabbath several different times when he healed someone on the Sabbath and was attacked for it. Now in Matthew 21, he's going to be questioned about authority. He came to the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people confronted him as he was teaching and said, by what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority? First of all, let's understand something. This is a very good and pertinent question. Okay? Every time they question Jesus, even if it tells us their motives are not good, sometimes we look at what they ask and recognize this is a good question and an appropriate question. They should have had a good attitude asking it. They should have been seeking for truth, for what's right, for good reason, good understanding. They were often not doing that. They were often looking for a way to trap Jesus, a way to ensnare him in his ideas. But Jesus does not answer their question, even though it is a good question. This is a question that should be asked of anybody who is teaching something saying it comes from God? This is a question that needs to come. Where does this come from? And if they say this comes from God, what's the next question that we should ask, or the next request we should make? Show me. Because if it comes from God, where is it going to be found? Today. In the Bible. Okay? That wasn't the case back here. Jesus was telling them things that they could not open their Old Testament scriptures, because the New Testament wasn't written yet. They couldn't open their Old Testament scriptures and find all of these things. Jesus was bringing them some different things, some things of transition, about bringing in his new kingdom, about ending the old law, bringing in the gospel. So there's a change coming on. So Jesus is telling them some things that are hard for them to hear because it's new, it's different, it's about things changing. And he cannot simply open a Bible, an Old Testament of scriptures, the scroll, and show them what he's saying. Many times, very often, he can tie back to those scriptures and show how those scriptures were foretelling that what he's doing now, that this is it. But he can't just open up an Old Testament scripture set there and show them these. So what does he do instead? What were we talking about last week? Miracles. Okay? He would say, I'm telling you this, and to prove to you that I am who I say I am, and that what I'm doing is the plan, the will of God, he would do miracles, which should then have made them come to the logical conclusion, if you can do things that no human can do, then we should listen to what you're saying and see whether or not this adds up to what we see in the scriptures and what they're foretelling, if this is true or not. It should have made them listen. The miracles should not have made them believe. The miracles should have made them open to listen and to think these things through, to study these things, examine these things. There's not any time in the scriptures that we read that their faith was through the miracles. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. The miracles were not to make them believe. The miracles were to get their attention and make them listen. If you can do this, which obviously comes from God, then we need to listen to you to hear what words come from God. Okay? So, why are you doing these things? What authority is behind it? Who gave you this authority? And Jesus' answer to them is a question back to them. If you'll answer a question from me, then I will answer your question. I'll tell you whose authority this is. The baptism of John, where does it come from? From heaven or from men? I want you to think about how brilliant this is. Who was John? The foreteller, the one to come before him to prepare the way for him. By description of position, who was John? A prophet of God. Okay? His assignment was to be the forebearer, the foreteller, the way preparer for Jesus. Whose authority was behind John and his message? God. What does Jesus do when he asks them this question? He lets them know very quickly, you're not going to accept the answer that I give you if I just give you the plain answer. Because there's somebody else that's been right here in front of you who has the authority of God behind him, and you didn't listen to him either. But Jesus asked them the question, you tell me, who's the authority behind John's baptism? Is this a God-given message, or is it a message that comes from men? In all spiritual matters, it's either one or the other. There's not anybody else in all of creation who comes up with spiritual ideas. Why? Why only God and man? Okay, because God is spirit. Who else in all of God's creation is spiritual? Us. As far as all of God's fleshly creation, we're the only other spiritual beings. All spiritual ideas are going to either come from God or man. Period. So Jesus doesn't leave it up to anything else. He puts the only two possibilities out there and says, you tell me who's behind John's baptism. Okay? Very good question. He knows they're not really interested in finding out the spiritual authority. They've already rejected God's authority with John. And so what does he do? He asks them this question in a way that puts them in a dilemma. A logical dilemma. Okay? When you ask this question, they do some thinking, some reasoning. And their reasoning is capable. Okay? They are not inept at reasoning. What do they reason? If we answer him and say that what John was doing came from God, then he's going to turn that back on us and say, then why didn't you believe him? Why didn't you obey it? Why didn't you do it? Perfectly logical reasoning. And if we say it's from men, the people are going to come after us because the people all perceive John as a prophet. So if we say this is going to be the conclusion. If we say this is going to be the conclusion. You see what's happening? They're reasoning logically and following the conclusion. What's going to happen to all this? The problem is they started in a bad position.
Well, it doesn't say here, but also if they say it came from God, John said, this is he.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Precisely who Jesus was.
Yes,
And they
that's right.
believe it.
Yeah, they've rejected everything that John has brought out. Specifically here, talking about the baptism, we can't say it came from God. We're not going to say that it came from men because then people are going to turn on us. We can't tell. We don't know. They come in with a wrong attitude, wrong reasoning in what they're doing, a wrong approach. When they get put in this position to have to give an answer, they lie. Okay? Understand, they lie. They don't answer. It came from God or it came. They decided we can't answer either one, so we're just going to say we don't know. It's a lie. So they put Jesus in a position to answer a question. He says, okay, you answer me first. And then they just lie. Their intentions are bad all the way through this. And so Jesus answers them and says, then I'm not going to tell you what you want to know. I'm not going to give you the ammunition you're looking for to attack me with it. You're not sincere in this. How does he know they're not sincere in this? Yes. Bigger picture, they're looking at Jesus. He's God in the flesh. He knows their hearts. How does he know they're not sincere, not counting that?
They've seen all the miracles. That's one thing they're questioning about authority. I think the other thing is, he's going back into the temple the next day after he just turned over those tables and made this big ruckus. And that's another thing they're probably asking about, where you get the authority to do that. But they already knew that was wrong to have it there anyway.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So they knew they were wrong.
Yes.
And now they're more concerned with how do we answer that question? Then what's the right answer?
Listen, we hear a lot of discussion today in spiritual matters that are not reasonable, logical discussions. Conclusions are drawn, and those conclusions are pressed over and over again, so they become accepted ideas, and they're not logical. They're not logical. Somebody says, well, I know so-and-so, and we've talked about the Bible a lot over the years. I follow what the Bible says. They follow other things, but at least they are honest and sincere. Really? Have they looked at the truth at all? And if they have, are they still staying where they were? If you see the truth and you stay where you are, you cannot go forward from there saying, I am honest and sincere in what I'm doing. You can't. That's a lie. Now, you can say, I am very solidly and determined to stay where I am. Okay. But don't claim honesty and sincerity. If you've never seen the truth, you may be honest and sincere in doing what you're doing. But once you see the truth, you cannot stay where you are and claim honesty and sincerity. That makes sense? That's logic. Okay? If you haven't seen the truth, of course, you may be honest and sincere and wrong. Saul of Tarsus was in those shoes. When he was presented with truth, he was given a choice. Change or stay. He changed because he was honest and sincere. There were others put in that same position who did not change, like these folks, who could not claim to be honest and sincere. So when we see this, let's understand these hard-hearted, very determined, rebellious religious leaders, they rejected John, they rejected Jesus, they rejected everything that was coming from God. They rejected all of it. They had no intention of listening to and learning from John and benefiting from the prophet of God who was there to help them. They had no intention of listening to and learning from Jesus, who's God in the flesh, who was there to help them. No intention. They didn't accept John and the authority from God that came with him. They're not going to accept Jesus any more than John, because they are rebellious, disingenuous, defiant. They're liars, but they're religious. Right? Being religious has never made anybody right. Being godly, following the religion that God gives, that's always right. They're not going to accept Jesus any more than they accepted John. Jesus put them in a logical bind. And in this logical bind, he shut their mouths. They couldn't do anything further. They wanted to trap him with words. He trapped them with their own words, with their own attitudes and ideas. What authority is behind what you're doing? Great question. Great question. Why did they come to Jesus with that question? Notice Jesus didn't prompt this. They came to Jesus with this question. And I want us to realize that even though these people were rebellious against God, even though they were having, excuse me, I can feel it coming. Thank you. Even though they had ill intentions, had no desire to change who they were, to come to God, they did have an understanding. an understanding that you need to have God's authority for what you're doing. When it comes to spiritual matters, God's authority is supposed to be behind it. Now, their misconception was that under Judaism, with the way they had changed it and corrupted it, perverted it, that they still thought they had God's authorization. And now that they were being shown something else, they reject it. But the question they asked Jesus is the right question, and it's proper that he put it right back to them. Authority.
So I guess that they figured that they had to prove it and then tell the people, we'll prove it,
Yeah.
instead of doing it that way. But then in the way that they said whose authority that they is, that means that they admit that whatever he's doing was something that was beyond man or whatever.
Right.
They said, well, whose authority are you doing these things? Because they say, they admit that he's doing things
Yes.
and he's doing it,
Yes. Anybody who lives under a system of law is always thinking about this question about authority. I can do this. I have the freedom and the right. Why? Because somebody authorized it. Or I don't have the freedom or right to do. Why? Because somebody in authority said you can't do that. Okay? Authority. Why can you not get in your car tonight and drive home doing 90 miles an hour? Because there's nowhere in this country that has a speed limit that allows you to go 90 miles an hour. Authority.
That's the question that's being posed with the contention in Minnesota is,
Absolutely.
does the government have the authority to remove these people from our country? Some are vehemently against that, but
Listen, boil it down to a very simple thing. Is this a country? Are we a nation? Then do we have borders? Does every other nation in the world have borders? Does every nation have the right to determine who crosses their borders?
they have it and exercise it.
And exercise it. We are the only country that I know of in the world who has a government who's arguing over whether or not we should have borders and enforce them. The only one. If you're here and you're not a citizen and you were not given permission to be here, then you're a criminal. And every day that you wake up in this country is another crime. Say, but you're not going after the crime. Listen, it boils down to something very simple. If you want to be here, get permission. Okay? I've visited other countries. I have never visited another country without getting permission. And when I went in, they stamp your passport and say you're allowed to come in, your visa, whatever you were required to have. And there's a date on there saying you better be gone by this time or we'll find you and help you get gone. And I say, yes. And I'm out of there before that date or by that date. Why? Because it's their country. I'm a guest. You want to be here? Be a guest, not a criminal. We're not talking politics here. We're just talking laws, rules. Everybody that lives under law deals with authority. Whose authority is behind the law? This is a great discussion, a great question. And we need to be aware of it, and we need to think about it. If Jesus agreed with many people in the discussions I hear today, and they said, whose authority is behind what you're doing? He would have said, authority? Who cares about authority? I do what makes me feel good. No, that's not what's at discussion here. Is your authority from heaven? Is it from men? That's the right question. Who came up with what you're doing? Is it from God or is it from men? Next chapter, Matthew 22. The Sadducees come to Jesus, and you remember what they ask him? They they pose this scenario, and the way they pose it, it's not, I've heard people say they put this as if it's a real thing. Jesus did that sometimes, telling a parable or something. A certain man had 2 sons. Was there really a man with 2 sons? I'm going to trip in a minute. Or was he just posing an idea for them to think about? I'm not at all saying that they were arguing that this is a real scenario. More than likely, this is a posited scenario, something that could happen according to the law. If a man marries and he dies and he hasn't had any children yet, according to the levirate law, given back in Leviticus, explained some in Deuteronomy, then if he dies not having any children, his next brother would marry her and have a child in his oldest brother's name. What was the purpose of that? Seed line, inheritance, there a lot tied to it. So they said in this scenario that we're positing here, the second one dies, the third one dies, the fourth one dies, all the way through the 7th. They all married her, they all died, and none of them had children by her. Now in the resurrection, whose wife is she going to be? Because they were all married to her. Well, first of all, who were the Sadducees? They didn't believe in the resurrection. They didn't believe in angels. They didn't believe in the spiritual realm beyond the physical. Well, if you come to me asking me questions to explain something to you when I know good and well you don't believe in what you're asking, then either you need to be asking me, why do you believe this? Explain to me your thinking. I get that. There's a difference in our thinking here. Why? That's not how they come to him. They come to him posing a question about what's going to happen in the resurrection when they don't believe about the resurrection. They're not saying, teach us about the resurrection. They're saying, we're going to pose something here to you to make you look foolish, to make the idea of resurrection look foolish. And what does Jesus do? Their argument in syllogistic form, break it down, see if it's logical. If the law of Moses has the levirate marriage law, and it does, if there's a resurrection where 7 brothers and their 1 wife will rise from the dead, then the 7 men will all be married to the same woman at the same time in the afterlife. That would be the layout of their argument. Now, if you ignore their starting place, their argument seems to lay out well, right? An argument, when it's laid out as premises and a conclusion, can follow a logical line without being right. All boys are smart. Dave is a boy. Therefore, Dave is smart. Now that's a logical layout of an argument. But if you hang out with me sometimes, you'll see me do something dumb. And you'll go, yeah, that doesn't add up. It might follow logic, but you started with a wrong premise. Right? It can follow the laws of logic in the argumentation, but if you started with a wrong understanding, a wrong foundation, then you're not going to get to the right conclusion. Okay? So they're trying to make the resurrection look ridiculous, make it look silly. Obviously, you can't hold up that point. What does Jesus do? He says, you are wrong. 2026 United States of America, this is worse than walking up and punching somebody in the face. You are wrong. You are in error. You don't know the Scriptures or the power of God. Rocky Balboa was never hit so hard. You think you know everything? You think you are the spiritual great leaders that are going to help everybody get to heaven? You're wrong. You don't know the scriptures that you think you know so well. You don't know the power of God. You don't know what you're talking about. Now, I just said that kind of strongly. We don't get his tone of voice here. He might have said that strongly, or he might have said it very gently. He just as well could have said, "You're wrong. You don't know the scriptures or the power of God." I don't know his tone of voice. Nothing there to give us that. But we do get the words. And whether he said it with strength, passion, or whether he said it very gently, hoping they would hear it, the message is still the same. If you look at somebody and say, "You are a liar," how does that get them? How does that come across? But if they say something and you go, "Yeah, I don't think that's right," you just said the same thing. You just said it with a nicer tone and approached it differently. Jesus said this very plainly to them. Doesn't mean he said it harshly, but he said it very plainly. You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. He says you're in error. You're wrong. He says you're ignorant. How does that hit people? When they come to you with something, to start the conversation off saying you're wrong and you're ignorant. That's exactly what he said. You don't know the scriptures. You don't know the power of God. You're talking about something you don't understand. Try that next time somebody brings something up to you. It's going to be hard to be heard well. I'm not saying Jesus did something bad here. He did something exactly right. There are many times that we may not be as forward and as honest with people as we should be. When we see this, Jesus makes a declaration that has an assumption to it. And the assumption is that we can arrive at the truth by listening to the Word of God. And it's not one person's truth and another, no, it's truth. Truth is truth. This junk we've got going around in our society saying, well, this is my truth. No, there is no such thing. It's either truth or it's not. It's not my truth, your truth, his, her. No. It's either right or wrong. Well, this is the way I see things. Okay, now that's a better statement. And that lets me say the next statement, you're wrong. Or perhaps I'm wrong. We can't both be right if we're saying different things. Jesus said, you're wrong, which means you can be right. You could see what the truth says. And you could come to the right conclusion with that. Not only can you understand and come to truth, you must. He doesn't say you're wrong and it's okay that you're wrong. You're wrong. You don't know God, His power, His Word. Thus, you need to. So he gives them another thing for them to consider. That they might not, again, ignorance. By the way, if we didn't have the Scriptures telling us all the things that we need to know for life and godliness, guess what we would be? Ignorant. If you're at this time, when Jesus is introducing some things to them that they don't understand, they are supposed to be ignorant, but they're not supposed to remain ignorant. He's telling them things. They're supposed to be listening, hearing, learning, coming to faith as they think these things through, as they consider them, as they examine them. They're supposed to be changing. We all came into this world with a whole lot of ignorance. This is an adult class. I hope there's a whole lot less ignorance than there used to be in our lives. But there's still some. I know there's, I read something a long time ago, somebody said, the more I learn, the more I realize what I don't know. There's a lot of ignorance still in our lives because we're not God and we don't know everything. And we don't, you take all of the knowledge in this room and we still only know a sliver of everything. Being ignorant is not wrong. Being ignorant when somebody's telling you the information you need to know can become wrong. So Jesus tells them you need to learn. So in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels of God in heaven. Notice the picture Jesus gives them to help them understand how we're going to be in the resurrection. Not male and female, not married to one another, not having these earthly ties and connections. And what's the picture he uses to drive this home? Angels. Someone else that the Sadducees don't believe in. So in answering and explaining this, what's he doing? He's dismantling their doctrine. What makes them Sadducees? He's taking it apart. They don't believe in angels. They don't believe in the resurrection. They don't believe in the spiritual, lasting, going onward. So he's attacking the whole thing. When we see this happening, we need to think. The angels are being used as an argument about the spiritual, about who we are beyond the flesh. And as we see this, we could stay here for a while. I'm going to move on a little bit. Jesus goes to Exodus 3, quoting for them of God being the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying this to Moses. When Jesus quotes this about God saying this to Moses, where are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when God says this to Moses? I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Where are they? Physically dead. But he doesn't say, I was the God. I am the God. And then he goes on to say, God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. What's the implication? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are still in existence, still alive. Not fleshly, but they will be again in the resurrection, at least momentarily. So he's laying out things to help them see, help them understand that this has been God's explanation of resurrection all along. Even when he wasn't giving them detailed explanation, he was giving them things that they could hold on to. So, as he takes apart the Sadducees' doctrine, their belief in angels, their belief in the spiritual and the ongoing, what happens then if they leave that scenario and they go right on being a Sadducee and holding those beliefs? It's a logical fallacy. They're not being reasonable. They should see from the Old Testament that God has already given information that tears their doctrine apart. What are they going to do with it? What are they going to do now that they've been faced with it? They've got to move forward. How are they going to do that? Either changing or staying the same. Faithfulness or rebellion. Well, the Sadducees are not going to cease to exist. Some of them may have changed, but certainly all of them didn't. And so we see the difficulty of what happens when we call, as God does, upon all people who are searching out spiritual things to be logical, to be reasonable, to deal with truth. There are so many people today who are religious, who are not spiritual people. Now, term definitions. Was that the first bell or second? First. Oh, good. Definitions matter. If you're going to have a discussion with somebody about things that are really important, one of the important things to do in that discussion is to define words. Because if we're using words in different ways, it messes up the discussion. Right? What we were talking about a while ago in our legal system and law and being a country, being a nation. If you come here or we go somewhere else and we do it not with permission, then what are we? Trespasser. Okay, that's one word. Lawbreaker, criminal, illegal alien. We don't mean that from outer space. It means you don't belong here. Okay? Those are legal terms. Why do people want to change those terms and turn them into something else? Because then it takes the reason and the logic out of it. And we can talk about how we feel. I am not at all saying that I don't care about people. Do I want people to have as good a life as they can have? If they've got problems, do I want them to be able to get somewhere? Absolutely. Yes. I care about that. It is not uncaring or unfeeling to say you still have to follow the law. You have to be obedient to the law. Doesn't mean I don't care, but if all I do is care and I don't think, then what we have is lawlessness, anarchy. Just do whatever you want to. Whatever makes you feel good. Well, that's neither rational nor logical. We can care and still do what's right. You know, when Paul was writing to the Ephesians about making sure that they stand in the truth, he talked about having love for people. He also talked about loving the truth. You can't love the people so much that you discard truth. And you shouldn't hold on to truth in a way that makes you not love the people. It takes both. God expects both. Loving the truth and loving the people that you're teaching the truth to. We don't need to be in any kind of uncertainty when it comes to our faith. Faith is convinced. Faith is decided. Faith is committed. Faith is not a blind leap in the dark. That's what this study is all about. That the reason God expects us to deal with truth with reason and logic is that the truth with reason and logic brings faith. And faith then guides our actions, our emotions, who we are and what we do. It's not supposed to be the other way around. Never. You want to have a terrible relationship with anybody in the world? You let it be an emotionally driven relationship. And your relationship will be terrible. Period. You let it be a relationship of reason and logic and commitment and decision that then guides the emotions, and that relationship can flourish. That's the way God has dealt with us from the beginning. That's the way He deals with us all the way through the end. Lord willing, next week we'll pick this up and continue.
We're going to go ahead and get started. Everybody will go ahead and make their way on in here. I went on a mission trip one time when I was in college. I took a trip to the Bahamas. Not like the vacation Bahamas. This is like the Bahamas. And while I was there, I was working with a congregation that started out with just a family and had grown to quite a substantial size for the area. And the minister there, his name was Tavaro Hanna. And Tavaro really didn't have any help other than his wife. It was really just him who was going out into the community and reaching out to people. And he had done a tremendous job doing so. And so we asked him one day, we said, how do you do this? What is your method for reaching out to people? And he said, I try to do everything I possibly can to find a way, to find an excuse to talk to someone about the gospel. And he told us a story about how one time he was in a coffee shop. And in this coffee shop, as he's standing in line, he's behind this woman, and he notices that she has a tattoo on her arm. And it's in Greek. And so while he's in line to get coffee, he asked this woman about her tattoo and what it says and what it meant. And that led to a conversation about one thing, which led to a conversation about another thing, which led to a conversation about the gospel. And he ended up having Bible studies with her. She ended up being baptized, and she was still faithful to that day. And we just thought that was amazing, that he would look for anything, any tiny little thing that he possibly could. Any excuse to talk to someone about the gospel. In the high school class tonight, we were talking about the Sermon on the Mount. We were talking about the way that Jesus speaks about Christians. What we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to look like. He says, you're the salt of the earth. He says, if that salt has lost its flavor, then it's not good for anything. He says, you are the light of the world. He said, a city that's set on a hill cannot be hidden. People don't set up a candle in their house and then cover it up. He says, you have a purpose. There's a reason that you are here. It's not to just blend in. It's not to just go with the flow. It's not to just be like everything else around you. It's to stand out. It's to be a light. It's to go a different direction. It's to find any excuse that you possibly can to share the gospel with anyone that you can possibly find. Sadly, sometimes we're afraid to stand out. Sometimes we don't want to be different. Sometimes we don't want to be the city on top of a hill. We talked about in the high school class tonight about how Jesus was not afraid. It didn't matter who Jesus encountered. It didn't matter what the situation was. He spoke the truth. He never shied away from his mission. And he stayed faithful to his mission and his calling and his Father until he died on the cross. We are called to be something greater. We're not called to blend in. Jesus didn't die on that cross so that we could look like everything else around us. Jesus died on the cross so that we could look for any excuse to tell people about what he did. Don't be like everything else around you. Don't blend in. If you're here tonight and you've lost your light, if you have any need, make that need known while together we stand and as we sing.
Linger, charmed by the world's delight. if I'm ill-prepared or if we just have no announcements, but I have no announcements. Does anybody have announcements that they would like made? Jess? Thank you. And the money tree is not for the baby thing that I announced Sunday night. It's the moving thing. So, sorry about that. This is for Thad and Morgan, helping them with their move. Jessica's put together or organized this money tree. If you've not given to that, tonight is the last night she's wanting to try to get that money together for that. So please make sure to see Jessica Pace if you have not on the money tree. Anything else? I do have a little birthday at the end, but we have one other announcement to make as well. Eric, you want to come up?
Yes, thank you very much. I stand here to make an announcement about Hazel Capes, our granny, not to be confused with Granny Lipscomb, but we also have a granny in our family. Because of her declining health, she has been placed on hospice. So we, of course, covet your prayers for what she may need and also for the family. There's also a third grandchild, great-grandchild in the household, so visitors are limited right now because of that and also because of the needs of Granny. So we do covet your prayers for that. Thank you very much.
Sorry to hear about that. Eric and Tanya, we're with y'all, praying for you. Let's say a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for our time together tonight, to be able to open your word and to study together, to sing songs worshiping you. We also thank you for this time for us to be able to wrap our arms around Eric and Tanya as they're enduring some tough times now and ahead. Just pray for blessings upon the family and Miss Hazel, that she will be kept comforted. And we know she's been a good Christian through time, so we know she is going to a much better place. But we do pray for comfort for the family. Help us to help where we can. Be with all those also in the congregation and throughout who are dealing with lost loved ones, dealing with physical pain and afflictions. Help us to reach out and help where we can. Help us certainly as we leave from here, keep us safe, and may we go out into the world and show Christ through our life. Help us to always be like him. In his name we pray. Amen. We do have a birthday before we go. Reagan, there he is.